Hi there, Sonia here. Welcome back to another episode of the Help I'm Artist podcast. Now, I love seeing artists succeed, and that's why I make this podcast. The podcast is here to help artists create with confidence, work with impact, and understand the business of art. As artists, so much of what we do comes from within us. How we feel and what we think will literally determine our steps. That is why I focus so much on the mindset behind good art. As artists, we need confidence and clarity as to what and why we create. But how do we do this? How do we reach our potential art audience? And what tools can we use to communicate this? And how can we get paid for our art? As artists, we need to realize that we are in business. Today's guest is a perfect example of an artist who takes her talents and gifts seriously. She sees herself not only as an artist, but as an entrepreneur running her own business. I am honored to have Leonie E. Brown as my special guest. She's an award-winning South African fine artist, and I had the awesome chance to take classes from her on my trips to South Africa. Her style, her philosophies, and her willingness to share her insights are truly inspiring. In this honest and open-hearted conversation, Leonie relays her journey as an artist. She shares generously what life as an artist looks like for her, and even though her journey has not always been easy, she has come to a point in her career that she can now translate what life has taught her to bring hope and joy to others through her art. Her practical approach to art and to life, and the ability she has to reflect on the creative process, makes this interview even more powerful. And I know that her insights will help you as an artist get more clear and confident about your art, give you a better understanding as to how to connect with galleries or work on commissions and build your art career. Because there were so many great nuggets in this interview, I have split the interview into two parts. Next week you can hear part 2. But now sit back and enjoy the first part of our conversation. Here she is, Leonie E. Brown. Leonie, so nice that you have joined me for my podcast. I know you from my visits to South Africa, going there on family visits. So thanks for joining me. Can you just tell me a little bit and our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I'm currently 55 years old, married, no children, lots of animals. I think currently we have 8 animals, 3 dogs, they're all adopted. And then we've got 2 birds and a cat, so that's 5, 6. Oh, and a horse, that's 7. Sorry, 7, yeah. We live on a small holding. We rent a cottage, my husband and I, a small cottage. We moved from a big house in Melkbosstrand, which was on the beach, and we moved into 75 square meter cottage with these 3 massive dogs living in the cottage with us. And also the horses on the property, so I can just saddle up and go for a ride. Because obviously being an artist, for me, art is my job, even though I love it. So for me, horse riding is my relaxation. I studied fine arts and exhibited quite a lot. So I'm an exhibiting artist, selling, and also I have had the art school since 2004.
I just want to take you back to that moment that you decided to become an art student. What made you decide? Did you have to choose between different studies, or did you always know, I'm going to go to the art school?
I didn't really. I always did very well at art. Art was my best subject, even at school, even as pre-primary, I used to draw. And it was sort of between art and drama that I was falling around. And then I sort of liked the exhibit that, they have at the universities, they have this exhibition, what they offer and stuff like that. And I liked what they were offering. And then I decided, that's it, I'm doing it. I didn't really think of the consequences. And I think at the stage of my life where I needed to express myself, because part of who I am as an artist is also the things that's happened to me. So at that point in life, I needed to show or express the inner things that I was struggling with. And art was a way for me to do that because I didn't have words to do that. There was I couldn't talk. So it was a way of bringing the inside out. So I think, look, I believe in a higher being. I believe in God. And I think it was the hand of God that pushed me in that direction. Because I don't know if I would have actually been alive if I didn't do art. I think I would be not here anymore. Grew up with a lot of emotional, physical abuse, and I was raped when I was 15 and felt pregnant and lost a child, and date raped on a regular basis by the same person. It was a very art for me was the way to escape. So, but in the art that I did at varsity, it was very angry art. I was so off my head. I mean, I was suffering from anorexia. I did not know what was going on. I was painting pain. So it was a way to get it out there, but it wasn't a healthy way. And that's why I paint the way I paint now, because you can paint stuff and you can re-experience it over and over and over. And other people will look at your art and they might have gone through the same experiences. I might be attracted to somebody's art because I see something of my psyche in there or my spiritual experiences in there. It was like raw emotion on canvas. A lot of people looked at it and was shocked, but also they experienced the emotion with it.
So you finished your school and then you started exhibiting, or was it an exhibit that really was during your student time? How did that go that led up to the awards?
The art history lecturer really believed in me and liked my work. So him and this friend of mine, they just decided one day they're going to write me in for this big competition. It's like a national, in South Africa, it's a big national exhibition. That was the beginning of it. Now it's really big. I was told that the two paintings that was written in, they both came into the exhibition because it's a nationwide national exhibition.
Okay, yeah.
And the one painting then won the award for the best fine arts painting.
So that was a big deal.
Yeah. So that was where the exposure came from, and then after I finished my studies, I had to go work because I had a TED, which is a educational bursary, so I had to go teach. So I teach fine art, and I realized I was a very good teacher because I enjoyed teaching.
Okay.
I still had a few exhibitions during that time, and then I think I was about 24, 25, around about then. I just totally stopped painting. But it was good that it happened. And I then went into graphic design. In the end, I can say it benefited my art because I became much more conscious of the small things. I became more calculated. So when I started painting again in 2000, so it was a long, at least 10 years that I didn't touch a brush.
Wow. You made that switch to graphic design. Was there a sort of defining moment or something that how life went, or what made you choose that?
Well, I was living in a really small town, and I was probably one of the only single young women there. The old aunties wanted me to marry their sons, and I wasn't, I didn't handle it very well. So I just decided, and also it's a small town, and in those days, it was still during apartheid in South Africa, and there was a political party that was very far right wing. That was sort of, the town was one of their main places, and I was, I suppose, a little bit more left wing at that stage. So I would, with another friend of mine, we would organize exhibitions and then include all the schools in the area, including the colored and the black schools. And that didn't go down well with the far right parties. And I just decided I wanted to get away from that. So I basically went on holiday to Cape Town. So I added a newspaper for somebody advertising for a graphic designer. I had no idea about graphic design. I had the basics of design, which I studied. Got on a train, got myself there, no portfolio, no CV, nothing, and talked myself into a job. Ended up sort of freelancing as a graphic designer. I went from there, I went into designing like wine labels and things. So you're working with type and with crests, and you have to, again, you're doing this tiny little crest, but you started making everything by hand. And that's when computers suddenly entered the realm. Got some overseas recognition for some of the designs and stuff that I did. And by that time I gotten married, and then because I got married very late in life, like a few people said to me, why don't you teach? Why don't you teach? And then and my husband just said, well, why don't you try it? So I wrote a course, in those days a 3-month course, which is a very basic course to get people painting.
Okay.
And so they can walk away with a painting and say, I actually did this. But still, you know, with the color mixing and everything, sort of like a basic course, it covers sort of everything. And then I started, and it was full. That's how the whole story started with the school.
The artist, Leonie, what happened there that you started painting again?
Sure. The first painting I made looked absolutely terrible. It was so stiff. I was scared to paint. And like when we had this big garage, and my husband's like, why don't you paint in the garage? And I'm like, no, I can't. It's too big. So I had this little corner in a room, and because I felt so tight. And it took me a long time to get loose again and to get confidence again. So I just started painting, and I kept painting and painting and painting. And for some other reason, I remember the first, when I took my first work to the gallery owner was like, yeah, I'm not just sure. And then somebody walked in and like, oh, I want to buy this painting. And he's like, okay, leave all your work. Yeah.
That's special. But I mean, at varsity university, when you were studying, your painting was really driven by sort of inner emotion, was anger, it was a lot of pain. And then when you started painting so many years later, was it that you needed to find your style, or needed to find like your drive or your motivation? What made you paint then? What had changed?
My motivation had changed. I mean, I'm now back to the same kind of mark making, and maybe as confident as I was when I stopped. But what I wanted to paint was different, because things had changed. I had changed. I'd come to a point where I decided I do not want to paint things that show pain and hurt anymore. I want to paint things that shows hope, because we all have pain. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world that every day people die. Every day children get abused. Every day there's, I don't know how many hundreds of animals that dies out because we destroy them. And I wanted, and I know all that stuff. Why not give people hope? Because, I mean, I love what Einstein said. Somebody asked him once, Mr. Einstein, how do I change the world? And he apparently drew a circle in the sand, and then he stepped into it and he said, you start here. And for me, I wanted to start with, this is my life. This is what I had to deal with. This is what I've got out of that. So I'm not shy about what happened to me. I'm not embarrassed about what happened to me, but I wouldn't want to wish it on anybody else. But I can look back on it and say that it's made me who I am. I have compassion on other people. I have hope, because I know what it feels like to be hopeless. I know what it feels like to want to commit suicide. I know what it feels like a lot of my life felt like if you imagine there's a hole in the earth, a really, really deep hole, like straight down, and then on the one side of the shaft is like a chamber, and you actually living in that chamber, and once a day the sun is straight overhead, and you stick your hand out and you've got this one little dot of sunshine in the middle of the palm. And that's what I lived with most of my life. I lived with there's nothing except this one little moment of life. All my life I fought to be alive. I fought to survive. And I came to a point where I tried everything. I tried many different religions, and the one that helped me in the end was God, Jesus Christ. And the thing that helped me the most is I had to forgive what other people did to me. Because if I don't forgive, I can't move on. If I don't forgive, I can't have hope. Because unforgiveness is like a big ball and chain. I will permanently always drown in the sea of bitterness. I mean, I still have issues in my life that I deal with, like the need to be recognized, the need to be validated. Those are two big things for me. And I realized the other day that's something that came from my past. It's something that came from when I grew up, because my dad was an alcoholic. Unfortunately, that influenced me in a very bad way. I still have to deal with that on a daily basis. But in the process of dealing with it, I can say, yes, I believe that there is hope. There's a future. There's more than just this moment. It doesn't matter how bad it is now. If I'm alive today and I'm breathing today, it means tomorrow will be better. As long as I'm alive, life can change. As long as I'm alive and I'm breathing, I have hope. I didn't want to hit people over the head with, this is my pain and this is how much life sucks, and look at what happened to me. I wanted to, instead of hitting them over the head with pain, I wanted to present them almost with like a slice of bread. It says, eat this and you'll feel better. Eat this piece of bread and it will sustain you. So my dream is with my art is I see myself as a glorified postmaster. I believe that every painting has its own owner out there. And I'm painting something, even though I'm painting something from me or my life or my experience, that painting will speak to somebody specifically. And all I'm doing, I believe it's a download from God to me. He uses my gifts, he uses my talents, which he has given me. And I put onto the canvas what I feel or like or dislike. And the right person will get attracted to the painting. And that painting will be their specific message. Like I have a painting behind me. It's on Instagram as well. I'm busy with it. My name of the painting will be Where Mercy Found Me. To me, that's true. Mercy found me. I looked, I couldn't find, but mercy found me. And that's, somebody will see that and say, wow, that's me.
If you had to put words to your painting style, what would it be?
Okay, I've got basically, I've sort of expanded into different mediums. I've still got the traditional oils. I call it romantic Turnerism. That's my name for it. Because I love Turner. I think he's brilliant. I think his way of using paint and using oils like watercolors and using watercolors like oils, and the way he painted light, for me, it's the whole thing of light is the big thing, seeking the light. And then the whole thing of romantic is almost, so I do sort of abstract landscapes, and now I've sort of veered off into slightly abstracted, almost figure studies. And again, I'm using romanticism of the Baroque and Romantic period, and I use paintings out of that style, and then I abstractify it. So I would call that romantic Turnerism. Whatever I paint, there must be light in it. Even if it's the whole painting is dark, somewhere must be a shaft of light. There's actually 2 videos which I had shot, it's on YouTube as well, about that seeking the light, and it shows the working process as well. And then the other work I do is sort of also the abstract landscapes, and then full abstracts, which is I'm working with encaustics. Encaustic is actually a very old medium. It's a few thousand years old. And what they used to do, the mummies, when the Egyptians did the mummies, those coffins that they made, those things were all painted with encaustic. So encaustic is basically a wax. You can get either a hard or a soft wax. And the wax then gets, on the wax you work then with oils or acrylics or any medium. And then you heat the wax. Now in those days I used to put the stuff in the sun. And then as the wax softens, it absorbs the medium into itself. And the more layers you put on, the more you get this, almost like seeing through layers of water, because you get like hidden layers underneath. I basically ordered a book from Amazon, and I proceeded to teach myself. But the problem is the medium is very expensive, because you actually use beeswax, which is very expensive. And I work very, very large. And it is a difficult medium to work in, because you need heat and blow torches, and it's quite dangerous, actually. You need extractors. It's not really worth for me to teach in it, because it's a lot of money.
The facilities.
Yeah, the facilities and stuff. So I just teach normal, and then that I sort of keep for myself.
And do you have like a work routine? Like, what does your week look like as an artist?
I'm very strict. It's a job. It's a 9-to-5 job, and you have to treat it like a 9-to-5 job. people buy cars and it takes thousands of hours to put those cars together. It's the same with the painting. It takes thousands of hours and a lot of learning to put that painting together. You need to put in order to get out. So I generally teach on a Monday, a Friday, and a Saturday, and then I paint on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Thursday. And because I've got online courses now as well, so I'll come in 9 o'clock, and then I'll maybe spend an hour doing admin, an hour trying to do our online e-course, and then the rest of the day I'll paint or I'll experiment. But I come and I sit and I work. It doesn't matter unless I'm really sick. If you work for yourself, you can't afford to be sick.
No.
But
take a pill and keep going.
Yes. So I must be very sick.
Do you have a studio that you coming in? You have your studio at your house or away from your home?
I used to have a studio at the house, but the problem with working from home, unless you have something maybe next to your house or separate from your house, if it's in your house, it's so easy to get distracted. Some family member comes, I need this, or there's no milk, you quickly need to go buy milk. So it's better. What I find is I actually deliberately separated the studio because of that. So I rent a space somewhere else, and that's my sanctuary. So I come every day, I bring my dogs, they're with me, whining and crying.
Yeah, but you go to work. It's like you you take yourself seriously. It's your profession, and you need to put in the hours, and you're showing up and you're doing it.
Yes. There's a brilliant book I read a few years ago. It's called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, I think. So he did a study, and the average time that most people spend before they suddenly got noticed is at least 10,000 hours.
Wow.
So by the time Bill Gates invented Windows 1, he'd already, as a small kid, he was already working and inventing stuff. Look at somebody that's very well known like Miley Cyrus. I mean, go and look at how she grew up singing and spent hours and hours and hours singing and creating her voice, and then suddenly, there she is, So it never happens suddenly. It's a process.
Yeah.
Unless some fairy godmother ticks you on the shoulder, but for 99.9% of us, there's no fairy godmother.
Yeah, it's a rare something. The rest of us just have to put in the hours and the work. Yeah, and so that you train, you go to your studio, and then you really have an idea of what you're doing, or how's your process go? How do your paintings emerge or come to life?
It depends on the type that I'm choosing to do. If I'm doing my romantic landscapes, I generally design them before the time. I use Photoshop a lot, play with layers until I get an approximation of what I think is going to work. So I within that I structure the design. So I'm quite hectic on it must work as a design. So I do the whole thing on the computer. Then I'll normally do a printout from there, and then I'll work off the printout. Sometimes I'll work, if it's lots of detail, I'll work from the enlarged screen as well. And then the final painting, if it's a commission, and then obviously you have to stick to they agree on this is what it must look like, then it must look like that. But if it's something that I'm doing for my own pleasure and hopefully will sell one day, then if I feel I need to change it, I'll change it. So I'm always open to change. With the new work I'm experimenting with, which I haven't posted, is I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm just experimenting and doing lots of layering and throwing away a lot of stuff and just trying different things. So there's an element with the new work, there's an element of I'm thinking and I want to do this, but in the process of doing whatever I'm doing, I might discover something else. But I think I'm quite structured in how I approach, because like I'm quite messy when I work, but when I start a painting, I find that I have to clean up everything. Everything has to be in its place, and then I can mess. And I'm very analytical. So I really believe in standing back and analyzing. And also social media is actually amazing. So I post on Instagram and I ask people to comment, what do they think? And then I use those. So I like it that people comment because they might see something that I can't see. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to judge your own work.
There's a conversation piece that you have with your viewers and your public, and you feed off that and then incorporate that in your work.
I like it when people get involved because it's almost like they're part of the painting.
Is that what you hope to when you are working on a commission or working on a painting for a gallery or for an exhibition, that it has the life after the painting? Do you ever have feedback from clients that have bought paintings or that it's hanging somewhere that it really had an effect?
Yes, people don't often contact me, but the few times people have contacted me, they would always say, like, I look at it every day, it still speaks to me. I see new things every time I look at it. I know the one last year I did a very big commission for a 5-star hotel in Namibia, in Windhoek, and the owners of the hotel and the designers that contacted me, people stop and stare, so that's good. I've worked very long on a piece, so by the time I'm finished with it, on average I can spend between 30 to 60 hours on a painting. That's a long time. And then it will normally hang here in the studio for another month or two before I'm ready to take it somewhere. So obviously when you go to a gallery, you don't want to take one painting, you want to take, say, 5 paintings. So then it takes me a while to do the rest, So let's say it's with me, say, for 5 months before it goes anywhere. Sometimes even longer. And so by that time, I'm happy to get rid of it. I want somebody else to like it.
And can you explain describe a favorite project that comes to mind? Like, wow, that was really one of my favorite, or a favorite commission or a painting that you painted, and why?
I quite enjoyed that commission I did for that hotel in Windhoek because they gave me a lot of leeway. They just gave me color swatches and basically said, do what you want. And but then, of course, you have to stick to the design that you sent them. I liked it because it was challenging for me.
Can we break that down? Because, artists are listening and they think, oh, commission for a hotel, well, that sounds like a dream assignment. How does something like that come to be? Like, they had seen your work and then they contact you, and how does that, just break down that process?
In that case, I knew the architect from before. You see, commissions like that is normally, you have to build up a network. And people start following you and they start seeing you. And then, like, I knew this guy from before. He then got involved in the design. And because he knew me as an artist, he recommended me. Obviously, there was a whole package of artists that they recommended. And then I'd say it's word of mouth. The problem with social media is that you can have 200 likes or 20 or whatever. That doesn't sell the work. Somebody liking your work is not buying your work. It's just liking it. So it's good to have social media, but we need personal interaction. And I've had personal interaction with this guy. I knew him. I knew his wife. We had a relationship, and out of the relationship came the order. So he introduced me to the design team via the internet now, and they had a look at my website. So it's good to have a good website. A lot of artists only have Facebook now, but you still want to go to a website where you see the history of the artist. You see even if I can't possibly put all my work on my website. There's 500 pieces of art. I can't put all of them on. So you put on like a few select pieces and you have a history and you show your history on your website, and that gives you authority and legibility, like people like, okay, this person's actually been around. And then from a gallery point of view, obviously you're not going to just get a commission from a gallery for nothing. You need to have a relationship with the gallery. So I make sure that when I go to a gallery, I'll go and drive there and I'll meet the owner and I'll have coffee with the owner, and some of them are rude and some of them are nice, but you always stay nice and you always stay above reproach, and you end up getting a good reputation. I know the one gallery owner, and she recommended me because I had always been above reproach with her. I'd always been very honest with her, and this is what's happening. Or because sometimes a client will approach you directly because they don't want to go through, they think they can get it cheaper. So I would always say, no, you need to go through the gallery because that's where you saw it. And then she recommended me because this person is really honest. She won't crook you. She will do the best she can. So personal relationship in the end is where you will probably get more work.
Mm.
You know, I think it's wonderful to have stuff on Etsy and stuff like that, but there's a big difference between fine art and arts and crafts. Now you're talking about fine art. Now people are going to be spending $2,000, $3,000. That's a lot. I mean, for me, I can't even afford that. My own work, you know. So you can want to know something like people put their work on, say, Saatchi and Saatchi. Like I've also got my work on there, but it's very little that I'll get anything out of there because it's some foreign company. I've got no personal interaction with them. Unless you're selling regularly, they're not going to promote you. So you need that personal interaction.
Relationship. I hope you enjoyed the first part of our conversation. What a journey Leonie has had. I love it that she sees her paintings as a way to connect with her audience, and that she believes that every one of her paintings is made for somebody special. That even though she's an avid social media user and very active on different platforms, she values relationships and personal interaction, and that this has been key to many of her successes and winning large commissions. I'll add the link to her YouTube video, the one that Leonie mentioned. You'll see her in action, and she shares more about her work and the process she uses to capture the light. I'll add the link of the Malcolm Gladwell book, Blink, and of course I'll leave the details where you can find Leonie online. Next week I'll be back with part 2 of our conversation. Leonie will share more about her amazing commission for the Namibian Hotel and tell us more about her online courses and her art school in Cape Town. She shares what she loves and what she dislikes the most about being an artist, and more about the artists that have inspired her. So there's much more to come, so stay tuned. If you're ready to take your art more serious, and you want to find out how you can start to build your art business, then you can scoot over to my website and access my free resource, The Artist Success Guide. The Artist Success Guide is a 7-step plan to help you get more clear about your art and how to get it seen and sold. Go to www.soniasmulhere.com/Artist Success Guide. Thanks so much for listening, and see you again next time for part 2 of my conversation with Leonie. And to end off with a quote that Leonie mentioned, when somebody asked Einstein, "How can I change the world?" Einstein drew a circle in the sand and stepped into it. "You start here," he said. Maybe it's time for you to step into your circle. See you again next week. Bye for now.